Now we are joined by librarians Robin Bradford and Claire Scott, as well as authors Jasmine Silvera and Olivia Waite for their romance recs. The panelists will appear in the upper right corner while their slides will be directly ahead. Get your romance reading list ready, it's time for some recs!
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Romance Rex for Every Geek's Heart, part of Geek Girl Con Online 2020. We are here to help you find some books to fall in love with. All right, so here are your folks who are here today.
Hi, I'm Robin Bradford. I am a librarian in Pierce County, and my favorite romance trope is enemies to lovers, and my favorite place to find books is Twitter.
Hi, I'm Jasmine Silvera. I'm the author of the Grace Bloods and Tooth and Spell books. I find that my favorite place to find books are on podcasts. My favorite trope is found family.
Hello there, I'm Olivia Waite. I am a local romance author of historical queer romance and fantasy. I'm also the romance fiction columnist for the New York Times Book Review. My favorite trope is probably still marriage of convenience. It's just got my heart. And then my favorite place to find book is also Robin's Twitter, because she finds the most amazing things. So yeah.
Awesome. And I'm Claire Scott. I'm also a librarian in Seattle, and I cannot tell you how much it tore my heart out to try and decide on a favorite trope, which is apparently impossible for me, even though I suggested it as a prompt. So my favorite place to find books is also actually Robin's Twitter and also Goodreads. I ended up discovering Twitter primarily as a vehicle for romance a few years ago, and I've never looked back. So we are here today to tell you about some of our favorite books that we hope will bring you joy in the apocalypse, some that might make you cry so that you can have a good cathartic cry during the apocalypse. So we're going to go through and tell you about a bunch of titles, and we're going to talk about some of our favorite tropes, and then we're going to share with you where we've got all of these, and also the ways that you can reach us to tell us what you think and what you think we should read. You can see our Twitter handles are all on there as well, so please reach out. All right.
So I had already picked my books for this panel, and then this one came to me as an advanced reader copy. It comes out in 2021 in the beginning. I'm not sure exactly when, but I just fell in love with how much fun The X Talk was, by Rachel Lynn Solomon. And it's a romantic comedy, kind of an enemies to lovers, but on the lighter end of that trope. And it's about two people who live in Seattle, Shay and Dominic, and they both work for the NPR affiliate in Seattle, which is not the real affiliate, but something similar. And their station is going under, basically. So they have to come up with this great program that will bring in all the listeners, and they decide to pretend to be exes that are hosting a radio show together. They are not exes. They are not exes at all, but they pretend to be, which kind of gets on Dominic's bad side because he thinks of himself as a serious journalist and doesn't, of course, like lying to people. But the show takes off because they have such great chemistry. And as you might imagine, all hell breaks loose when it's revealed that they are not, in fact, exes. It's very much a comedy. So there's not a high level of angst in the book. So if you're looking for something lighter, this is good. But they have great chemistry between the two of them. And it's really just a fun romance that will kick off your 2021 in the best possible way. Next slide, please. Here to Stay by Adriana Herrera. Fantastic book. This is a found family and also a little bit of enemies to lovers, but they're not really enemies. They're just kind of, they have competing interests, which is also on the lower end of the enemies to lovers scale. It's not Hatfield and McCoy's. It's just, yeah, we kind of want two things that will interfere with each other and we have to make it work. Julia works for a big department store company, but she runs their fundraising, not fundraising, their I can't think of the word, where they help people. She runs the part where they help people. And Rocco is there because the company is trying to go public. And so he's there to make the company look as profitable as possible so that they can go public and make all the money. And so they're at competing interests because one of the owners of the company wants to cut out all of the work that is not profitable. And so that's hitting Julia exactly where she lives. But they're also a group of transplants to Dallas from New York. So there's a big supporting cast of New York transplants that make this book just, it's so much more than just the romance between the two main characters. And hopefully it'll be a series, and so you'll get to see a lot more of all of these people that you fall in love with in the book, but also the main romance between the two main characters, Rocco and Julia, is very hot, and you will love it. Queen Move by Kennedy Ryan. This is one that everyone who reads it says it kind of tore my heart out. And I will go and say, yes, that's exactly what happened to me as well. So this is more of a, let's see, if I'm looking for a trope, I would say it's friends to lovers, but also kind of a second chance romance. Kimba and Ezra grow up together. They were actually born on the same day, and their parents have a friendship, and so they've grown up together. And of course, they were crushing on each other. And then something happens, and Ezra moves away. And so there's just no contact between them. They each have their own lives. And then they come back together in Atlanta, I believe. And, you know, they each have their own lives. Ezra has his relationship, which is on the downslide and soon to be over. And Kimba has her own issues. And so they're trying to stay away from each other because they each have their own individual baggage. And yet, of course, because it's a romance, you know that can't happen. They must be together. And so it's really the how, in this case, how they manage all of those issues to come together with a happily ever after at the end that will leave you in complete tears and you'll be happy for it. Spoiler alert by Olivia Dade. This is also a very fun book. Some mistaken identity, which is kind of intentional mistaken identity, perhaps. It's based on based in fanfic and fandom. So Marcus is star of a TV show that April loves. There's a lot of fanfic written about it. There's this whole community around this show. Turns out, though, that Marcus is also writing fanfic. And he and April know each other, but not by those names. So when something happens and they end up going on a date, everyone in fandom thinks that she's the luckiest girl ever. And turns out they actually like each other, but oops, Marcus has been lying to her the whole time. And so shenanigans happen when that is revealed. And you're kind of like, yeah, you don't deserve her. You don't deserve her, but because she's kind of awesome. And she decides to go her own way and do her own thing and is very much confident in who she is. And it's one of the best examples of a female that you're rooting for in a romance that I've read in a long, long time. And you almost don't want them to get back together because she's amazing and you're a liar. But also, there's some family issues on both sides that really, they don't excuse what happens, but they explain what happens. And so you do end up rooting for both of them, not only together as a couple, but separately, that they can both handle whatever their families are throwing at them, and they come out on the other side as better people, singularly and together. Legendborn by Tracy Dion. This is a YA novel, and I included it here even though it's definitely a fantasy novel as opposed to a straight romance. There is romance in it, but if you're looking for a straight happily ever after romance, this is not that. This is a fantasy novel with romantic elements. And it's Bree and her best friend are entered into a early college situation where they go to University of North Carolina, and they're taking these classes, and magic happens, and literally magic happens. And it turns out that Bree's mother, who recently was killed, had a whole bunch of secrets about magic that she had not shared with her daughter. And all of that comes to light as Bree moves through this secret world of magic. And there are actually multiple secret worlds of magic because there are competing magic systems. One is very much root magic, which is based in the earth, and the other one is based on Arthurian legend. So those two compete with each other, and she's kind of stuck in the middle because she's got both. And so if you're looking for a fantasy that is YA, but kind of on the upper end of YA because it takes place on a college campus, so everyone that she's interacting with is college age or older as an adult. If you're looking for something like that with a very detailed magic system, one that you're familiar with in the Arthurian legends and one that you may not be familiar with, which is Southern US root magic, this is absolutely the book for you.
I have to say, Robin, I read, spoiler alert, because you had recommended it, and I was a little bit skeptical because I was like, well, is it going to be like, I had just read a book that I will not name, that where the author was clearly not somebody who had roots in fandom, and that was really like, wow, did you know fan fiction can be good too? It's so important for youth to be able to tell their stories, and it was terrible. It was so bad. I was really worried about being burnt like that again. And I picked up spoiler alert and I was like, oh yes, this author has been here.
Yes, and you can tell that she very much loves the whole world of fanfic. It's not an also ran, it's very much these are our people.
Yeah, love it. Oh man. Okay, oh, hey, I am going to spotlight for our next round of titles. Oops, it doesn't do that by the thing. There we go. Here we go. Ms. Jasmine Silvera.
All right, team, here we go. So my top pick for this year, Deal with the Devil. It is, well, I feel like it should have a trailer that begins in a post-apocalyptic world, because it's this world, it's near future, I think 60 years out. There's been solar flares that have destroyed everything that runs on electricity. So it is really kind of, things are crumbling and civilization is crumbling. Corporations rule the major US cities, humanity lives in the rubble, and information broker Nina and her augmented team take a job helping these super soldiers called the Silver Devils, who are led by this guy, very hunky, Knox, who has a super secret agenda. And he is, for him, no spoiler. He's got a super secret. He's hiding from everybody. Nina starts out as a job to him, but then he sees what she and her team are doing with the information that they gather and the profit they make from gathering old information from the pre-post-apocalyptic world, and his opinion changes. So it's, I loved about it is that it hinges on a lie withheld, which is a really hard trope to pull off, I think, and Rocha does it really well. If you liked the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Orphan Black, The Old Guard, Mad Max Fury Road, it's got elements of all of those thrown in, and definitely if you're into found families and that ragtag gang of misfits who's like on the one last mission, this is the book for you. It's definitely a series starter. I don't think this is a spoiler to say basically they become librarians essentially in the post-apocalyptic future. They're creating community and preserving knowledge, and that is super. That just makes it a really super cool book. If you've got tropes, friends to lovers or adversaries to lovers, so not quite enemies, but they're definitely a lot of push and pull, and the flirting is a little bit of fighting. He admires how tough she is and strong, which is nice. She doesn't become a damsel in distress when they go on the road, and he's there. He respects her strength. I love that in an action with the hero and heroine where they like really interplay off of each other's strengths. And so, yeah, that is that is the one, drop everything and read it. It's great for folks who are new to romance, but like science fiction or fantasy, I think this will be an easy fit for your reading palette. Next slide. So my next pick is a shorty. This is a novella. It's called Layover. It's by Katrina Jackson. It's contemporary romance, and it's set in the here and now, or maybe like pre-here and now, the before times when we could go places. So that's what makes it fun, because it's about a travel blogger and a podcaster who have been meeting and flirting online hometown for like 24 hours. So they agree to meet in person. And of course, he's going to interview her on his podcast. And I love this one. The dialogue is great. I mean, it revolves around this podcast. So the back and forth between the two characters is just essential to the whole story. She makes, Lena is the character, the heroine. Tony is a Black Muslim American, which is wonderful to see represented in romance. They have this wonderful interplay with each other. They both really love music. So there's tons of like 80s and 90s R&B references, and she does playlists. And so if you like music, or if you're a music fan, this one's definitely for you. It's also nice and short. It's around 30,000 words, so like novella length. So you can probably get through it in an afternoon. It is a little steamy, but I think Katrina writes great steam, so I'm there for it. And Katrina has a great big backlist. So Katrina Jackson, if you haven't read any of her stuff, this is a great place to start, but there's so much out there. And it's got a very sweet and satisfying ending. We call this one the happy for now, not necessarily happy ever after, because these guys are young and doing their thing still, so they're not really in settling down mode. Next slide, if you would. So this is an oldie but goodie. So go with me here, because I think we see a lot of werewolves and we see a lot of zombies. And I think, so P.J. Schneider, first of all, is the pseudonym for Piper Drake, who's a local author who does this amazing romantic suspense books. She writes about dog handling teams, and they're great. They're wonderful, but that's not what we're talking about here. Here we are talking about her foray into paranormal romance. So Survive to Dawn is the third book in the series. It's called The London Undead. In a world where London has been taken over by zombies and werewolves are the only things protecting the rest of humanity from a zombie pandemic. Book 3 is about the pack's medic, Danny, who's this very hunky Londoner of Asian descent, and also a big hulking werewolf when he wants to be. Zombies have overrun London. London has basically been cordoned off, and the werewolves protect the city or the world from the rest of the city. And so it's an epidemic, and there's no cure, and the only thing standing between are the werewolves. And the human team, led by American scientist Deanna, comes in with the virus. Only she's got a secret about why she's there. She's trying to develop a vaccine. Her team gets slaughtered, and she is the only one who is saved by our hunky werewolf medic hero. So it's a short read. It's the last book in the series, so you can read it as a standalone, but it does reference the other couples in the previous books and the pack overall. I will warn you, I feel like it's a great book. A lot has been published since then, and Piper has grown a lot since then, or PJ Piper. So like, I love this one for it stands in the time that it was written, and that it does something really cool, I think, with the tropey werewolf and zombie thing that we see a lot. And there are 3 books to read in the whole series. So because it's short, the characters jump into the steamy part really quickly, and so you may find that like it feels a little jumpy. But if you go with the whole werewolves and the mating thing and the animal attraction thing, you'll buy it. You'll have a great time. Carry on. So my last 2 reps are for fantasy readers who like strong romantic subplots. This was me. I loved combing the fantasy books that had a big romantic element in them. And I wanted it to be satisfying and not end in tragedy. And I wanted it to represent both sides of the equation well. And I'm not a fan of the damsel in distress, or whatever the male version of a damsel in distress is. So my last 2, I'll start with The Witchmark, which is by C.L. Polk, came out in 2018. There are 3 books in the series, and I believe that the series just wrapped up. So if you're looking for a complete series, it's done. It's ready for you. It is a post-war Edwardian-esque fantasy world. They call that gas lamp fantasy. There's a few noble families who control all of the magic in the world. And there's a young doctor who's kind of escaping his past that gets caught up in this conspiracy. There's fae, there's magic, there's witches and healing versus hurting magic. And this really great family dynamic between the doctor and his family. No spoilers. It's the beginning of the trilogy, like I said. So yeah, if you like big world building, really immersive and really dense, unique fantasy setting, you're going to love this one. And it ends well for the romantic pairing. It is a male-male romance. It is, I would give it to a teen or a younger reader, although I don't think it's not a YA, I would say. But I would hand it off to my teen cousins. I think that they would enjoy that as well. And then my final one. So this is kind of geeky just by maybe readership. Shakespeare fans might really dig this one. It is The Queens of Innis, Lear. So it's a fantasy retelling of King Lear, which has never been my favorite Shakespeare play. I've always had problems with the daughters and the father relationship, but what I love about what Tessa Gratton does with this is she gives you the story from the perspective of the daughters, particular Elia, who's the stand-in for Cordelia. She creates this romantic subplot that's fantastic with Ban the Fox, who's the stand-in for Edmund. The world is incredible. It's super immersive. It feels British, Northern Europe, but it's incredibly diverse. Some decent queer rep in it. It's a gentle romance, but the romance is very clearly there and ends in a way, and I think I call this Fix-It Shakespeare because I think there are some Shakespeare plays where you just are like, eh. And I love that this fixes the ending of King Lear for me in a wonderful way. It is an adult fantasy. I might give it to a mature teen reader. There's a little content warning for miscarriage and infertility issues, which get woven through the entire book. So if that's an issue, just be sensitive to those readers. But yes, I think if you're a fantasy lover who likes romance, that's going to be the one for you.
Oh my God. The thing about not all of you getting to see us like at a table at the actual con like we would normally be is that we would have all been sitting here like flailing at each other's recommendations. I was like, oh yes, Katrina Jackson, give me more. So you'll just have to imagine, Geek Girl Con attendees, that all of us are like in a row at a table, like excitedly jumping up and down and like nodding like fools because we are so excited about each other's books. Oh man, I'm so stoked to read some of these too. I love it. Olivia, I'm going to spotlight you. All right, here we go. It is all you.
All right. Well, I just want to echo like the recommendations, especially for C.L. Polk and Spoiler Alert, which is a pure delight. Like so much fun, so fanish. I'm not in fandom a lot, but I was a classics major, and in terms of the classical background, because the TV series in Spoiler Alert is based on the Aeneid, and the inside jokes for the classics majors were perfection. Like absolute perfection. I started yelling at the author on Twitter because Olivia Dade, this is amazing. Where I want to send a copy to every classics major in like the country. It's so good and it's so fun. And like I could write entire like graduate theses on that book. It's amazing. And of course, C.L. Polk, Witchmark won the World Fantasy Award that year when it came out. And I did not know the third book was already out. Oh, I guess, yeah, no, sorry, Jasmine, I can't.
I'm pretty sure, yeah. I feel like either it's out or it's out very late this year. I think if you get started now, you'll have a chance it'll be ready for you when you get there.
Oh, yeah. That's perfect.
It did just come out. I will check.
You know, she has a Regency, like an alternate Regency fantasy with magic coming out as well. The Midnight Bargain, which sounds phenomenal. So, yeah. I'm sorry, are we on the wrong slide?
Bad in Each Other, is that one you?
Nope.
Oh, I wonder who it is.
Oh, is this Holly?
Oh, man. So, okay, Holly Paxson was supposed to join us today, and we are recording on the, like, terrible apocalypse sky smoke day here in the Seattle Puget Sound area. And so she was not able to make it because she is, like, incapacitated by migraine. But she put this slide up, and I have not read it, but I have heard only good things, and I'm dying to read it. So heads up. Has anybody who has read it able to jump in? Oh my God, Robin, go.
I actually just read this one like 5 days ago, maybe. It is set in South Carolina, I think. And it's a second chance. A sous chef, Birdie Malone, lost basically everything when she stood up for her boyfriend, who was her culinary school instructor, and he lost his job and kind of became one of those famous celebrity chefs and left her behind in South Carolina. But unbeknownst to him, she was pregnant. And so it's also a secret baby.
That's a mess. I love it.
And then he comes back to South Carolina. He's still the bad boy TV travel chef. But he's burned one too many bridges. And she is a chef that has also burned a lot of bridges because she's not one to put up with employers' sexual harassment. And so she has entered a contest, a cooking contest, that turns out he's going to be the judge of. And so that is super interesting, that dynamic where they come together again He doesn't know that she's going to be a contestant. She doesn't know that he's going to be a judge. You know, things are discovered, like this child, and basically she doesn't trust him because she was willing to risk it all and he left her by herself. So there's a lot to overcome. He has a lot of growing up to do, which he does. And what I most like about it is that it's super hot. It's Tasha Harrison. She is fantastic, and her books are flame throwers. But what I most like about it is she doesn't make it so he changes and then she takes him back and it's wonderful. He screws up again after they're back together. And, he's like, oh, I'm going to change. And finally, and it's his friend who says this, not the love interest, you need to change for your daughter and for yourself, not to get her back. And so he does that. And then, of course, he gets her back. But it's because he changed the person that he was for himself, because he wanted to be better, not just as a means to an end to get her back.
Man, I love second chance baggage.
Yeah.
Yes, me too.
So good. Okay, so let's see. This one's yours though, right?
Yes, that's me.
Thanks for taking that one on, Robin.
So this is where we get to talk about optimism and hope for the future, because this is a book I have not actually read yet. I have been saving this. And to tell you why I've been saving this, I'm going to give you a little background. When I was a kid, I was obsessed with everything to do with the stars. And that meant astronomy, getting really into the constellations and the science of it and the planets and outer space exploration and NASA and all of that good stuff. And the other half of it was absolutely reading and actually clipping the birthday horoscopes from the local paper every single day. I can still probably quote Sydney Omar's favorite phrases at this point. So this book, it's a contemporary FF romance. It's about an actuary and an astrologer, and they're set up on a blind date by the actuary's brother, who's actually the new business partner for the astrologer. The blind date goes terribly. It's awful. It's absolutely just one of those catastrophe dates. But she doesn't want to be set up on anymore. So the actuary tells her brother, no, that's it. It was great. Please don't set me up anymore. That was fantastic. It was a huge success. We're crazy about each other. So of course he turns to his partner and is like, so I heard the date went really well. And she's like, were we on the same date? This was awful. She literally runs out of the fancy wine bar. So they decide to keep up the ruse, because that's how fake dating works, which is also one of my all-time favorite tropes. So if you read Boyfriend Material by Alexis Hall from earlier this year, this is very much that same kind of bouncy contemporary trope. And of course, in the process of pretending to date, they develop real feelings. And I just am so excited. It's Seattle set. You can see the cover. I love the astrology angle. I love the fake dating. And I've been sitting on an arc for this to get through various deadlines of mine, because this book is like a promise to me. This book is the thing that is going to reward me when I get through the nonsense that has been happening this summer. I'm so excited. I'm so excited that we're getting contemporary sapphic stories like this from major publishers. It's just, the cover is gorgeous. I love absolutely everything. I cannot wait. Now this is also a promise, because I have been the world's biggest Jeannie Lin fan for so many years now. Her Peking Lee series in particular is one of my top romance series of all time. This is a historical. Lady Bai, our heroine, this is actually the third book in the series, kind of 3.5. There's an intro novella that's out. Actually, no, they're all out now. Hooray. So yes. There's a little intro novella called The Liar's Dice that's a story that kind of sets up who these two characters are. But this is a historical romance set in Tang Dynasty China. There's a lot of political intrigue. There's an assassination they're trying to solve. Our heroine, Lady Bai, comes from a scholarly family. She's been tutoring her younger brother, and her older brother has been asked to solve this assassination. And in the course of helping him do that, she meets up with her kind of old flame, a man named Gao, who's from like the shadier side of the tracks. So it's very much a cross-class romance. It's intense. It's wonderful. Nobody writes that kind of longing like Jeannie Lin does. Your hearts just ache for these characters, and it looks like it's never going to work out, but it has to, because they need each other so much. And it's just pure magic. I can't recommend them highly enough. And speaking of intensity, this book had me so much on the edge of my seat that I almost had to put it down. This is one of the most intense romantic suspenses I have ever read. It's set in Antarctica, for one thing, which is automatically wonderful and automatically terrifying. And it's set at a research station. It's the last day before all of the summer researchers are supposed to go home, and just the few winter holdovers are going to stay. And our heroine is a cook, and she's been kind of eyeing this tall, stoic, unsmiling bear of a scientist who wants nothing to do with anybody. He's the grumpiest human alive. He's gone to Antarctica because he hates being close to people, so he's gone as far away as possible. And of course, naturally, instead of actually leaving the next day, mercenaries invade, and they're after something, and there's a secret that somebody has dug up out of the ice. And to keep it safe, our grumpy, giant, stoic, man-hating bear person, he's not literally a bear person, although I would read that book too, and our wonderful, flavorful, funny, incredibly resilient cook go on this 300-mile Antarctic trek using only what they can carry. I was so scared for them, I can't even tell you. And they're being hunted by mercenaries who, of course, have things like helicopters and, snowmobiles. And I'm I don't know how they're going to do this. I know they must. It's a romance. They're going to live. Things will be okay. I have no idea how she's going to pull this off. It's definitely on the violent side. There's blood all over the snow at various points, and it is really frightening. And there's injuries, and there's other characters getting murdered, and it's really one of the most riveting reads I have read in years. I'm not usually good with horror. I'm not usually good with dread or suspense because I get anxious really easily. But somehow in this white, sparkling, beautiful, nightmarish, uncaring landscape, it just really, it picked me up, and it would not let me stop until I hit the last page. It was so, so good. And the romance is exquisite. It's so perfect. The ending, I started to see it coming about halfway through. I'm I think the author's going to do X. Please let this be true. And it was so good. It was everything I could ever want in a romantic suspense. This, I think, is actually Jasmine's.
This one's me.
Oh, yes.
I was here going wow, romantic suspense is not normally my jam, with the exception of Piper Drake, actually. But now I'm ooh, maybe I do want to read that.
Let me just jump in and say that I just checked out Whiteout, just right now.
It's so good. Robin, you love it.
Because I couldn't wait even until we were done. I had to check it out right this minute.
It's I'm just going to put that in my cart. I've got a shopping cart open on the side. This is what I really like about doing this panel online, is that I can shop while we're paneling.
You don't have to just hold on to the Post-its for later. It's the best. It's great. I hope viewers, wherever and whenever you are, that you're just pausing us so that you can then go and buy all of these books from your local indie, because dang, they're great. Okay, no, this one was actually me. So this one is The Order of the Pure Moon Reflected in Water by Zen Cho. And I feel like it's really important to note right off that even if you have already tried Zen Cho's novels and you felt kind of lukewarm about them, you should definitely still give her novellas another chance. Oh, and I guess I should spotlight myself here so that, here we go. Did that work? Did that make it me? I made it Olivia. Yeah, I'm just going to have to show all your faces. Sorry, guys. Okay, so everybody, heads up. Your faces are on there. You can all flail along with these great books. Okay, so even if you've already tried the novels and you weren't that into them, you should definitely still read her novellas, because Zen Cho has this gift for warm humor and capturing people's quirks that really shines through in her novellas and her short stories. So this particular one is a wuxia martial arts adventure romance with a setting that the author says, quote, draws on the semi-mythic China of wuxia and the Malaya of the emergency. She's Malaysian Chinese. And so this book starts with a bar fight and a waitress and a group of bandits who did not know what they were getting into. Like, at no point in this story does this group of bandits successfully understand what they are getting into, something that becomes increasingly clear as the book goes on. When the waitress, who is a former nun with a shaved head, informs the bandits that she will be joining them to help with cooking and cleaning, they haven't got very much say in the matter, although she cannot actually cook at all. She also lets them know that unfortunately she will not be able to sleep with them unless she can make an appropriate offering to her goddess afterwards, which is namely cutting off their penises. So there is a road trip and there are secret identities and there's a whole lot of banter and double crossings and shenanigans and this like very satisfying enemies to friends to lovers romance with a queer twist. So this is a really queer normative world, which is one of my favorite things as a reader, and that makes that even more fun. So I would not pick up this book if you're only in it for the action sequences, even though those are a lot of fun. The book's heart really comes from the found family feels and the gradual untangling of sort of the interpersonal dynamics that are going on. It's so good. Really do give it a try, even if you did not adore Olive Brothers, because it's so good. Okay. Next one is, okay. So let me make sure I didn't miss one. Okay, perfect. Okay, so I actually felt a little bit guilty about putting this one on here, partly because Jasmine is here on this panel. Hi, Jasmine. And I didn't want that to be weird. And also because this is the first time ever that I have ever been mentioned in a book's acknowledgments page that was not written by my spouse. And I almost wish that I hadn't been because I loved it so much and it was so my catnip. And now I'm afraid that people will be skeptical of my glowing recommendation. But here is the thing, everybody, you should really believe me, because if you like excellent beta heroes and fascinating world building and super cool settings and magic and a brilliant Black academic librarian getting to wear gorgeous dresses and own a cool antique bookshop while also being a nerdy genre fiction reader and being adored by a hot, starchy, virgin werewolf professor with a badass mom, this might be your catnip too. See, everybody's like one clicking right away. So just in case that's not enough to like hook you, which I mean, if it's not, I don't even know you. Go figure. Here's just a peek at the plot and the setting. So Binding Shadows is set in an alternate fantasy magical Prague in a universe where having magical powers is politically and personally dangerous. So you could be reported to the powers that be at any time if you get caught. But also, if you don't use your powers, it will eventually kill you. So you have to use your magic, but no one can know. So Barbara's powers aren't flashy, but they are very handy for a librarian archivist. She can find almost any book, regardless of how lost it may be, in these labyrinthine archives or secondhand bookshop where she works, and she immediately knows like key things about it. Things are going fine for her until a rogue book of spells causes her to have magical surges and launches her into a dangerous adventure. Good thing she works closely with the aforesaid very hot, starchy werewolf, secretly a werewolf visiting professor, Tobias, who has a whole magical family and a mom who can get shit done. Sexy times ensue. Seriously, this book is a total delight. It is the first in a series, and I am eagerly waiting for the second, which I'm sure you're working on assiduously. It's so good. This is more magic, more nerdy magic. So this is actually a short story, and it is free. So Kat Sebastian's Turner series, if you have not read it yet, highly recommended, manages to be frothy and angsty all at the same time. Perfect recipe for me. The only things that could make it better would be lesbians, casual fantasy elements, and behold, here you go, in a free short story, no less. So if you've read any of the Turner books, which follow these three queer brothers from their like gutter snipe con man beginnings to their eventual tumbles into respectability with moneyed hot dudes. You may recall that they have a sister, Sarah, and she owns this dressmaker shop that allows her financial independence and respectability, as well as lots of information about the ton. She is also a 40-something workaholic lady in need of a vacation, #relatable, which is where this story begins. So she's forced to take a break. So she heads to Cornwall. She wanders aimlessly, missing the city, missing having actual work to do. Who should she meet but a Selkie? Yes, a Selkie, a seal lady from Celtic folklore, who also happens to be a vigilante. What? Did you know this was coming? I did not, because there is no fantasy elements in any of the other books. This is like it. So together, they punish local abusive husbands and fall in love. What? It is delightful. It was also not steamy, which means that I can easily recommend it to my younger readers, my teen readers, who are looking for fluffy historical FF, which is A++. It's so good. And you can, I'll put the link on the Padlet that we share at the end. Oh, the Boyfriend Project. Man, I'm so excited about books, you guys, even in 2020. Okay. This is The Boyfriend Project by Farah Rashan. So, scene. Samaya sees a social media post of a guy who is definitely her boyfriend taking another woman out to dinner at a place that was definitely their restaurant. She storms over there to tell him off. And when she gets there, she's not the only one. It turns out that she's one of 3 women who have been catfished by this same cheating jerk, all of whom have showed up to tell him off. And a video of the ensuing hubbub goes viral, which honestly is a total nightmare. Like, I cannot imagine anything worse than any tweet going viral for any reason that I had anything to do with. Like, oh God. But at least, you know, the 3 women end up bonding and they end up in this like enduring, totally fabulous friendship. So obviously after this, Samaya's like totally burned by the whole thing, even though she now has these 2 awesome new girlfriends. And she has to ask herself, is it worth giving in to the appeal of this new smart, hot, super put together guy at work? Does she even want to waste time with dating when she could be developing her dream app? She's a programmer. And what if this new awesome guy cannot be trusted either? So this was definitely one of those contemporaries where like, dang, I do not know how they are going to get to the HEA. The stakes are high and they are believable. And I'm like reading through and I'm like, I know that we have to get here, right? This is the goal. This is the promise that you made as a romance writer, that we are going to get to this HEA, but dang, I don't know how we're going to do it. So believable stakes, like really tension as you're going through, and lady friendships, so good. And I cannot wait for the other ones in this series, which I assume will feature the other 2 women. And finally, oh my gosh. Okay. So I cannot talk about romance that's been making me happy without including at least one book-length work of fan fiction. So A Fair Return by Things with Wings is very long. It is 237,000 words, which is like Moby Dick plus The Old Man and the Sea, but like better than either, like so much better. Much more enjoyable as a read. So A Fair Return is a Schitt's Creek fic. So for those of you who don't know Schitt's Creek, who haven't seen the show, it is this Canadian TV show of an uber rich, kind of terrible family who lose all of their money and they have to move to this tiny, quirky rural town in Canada that's called Schitt's Creek because they bought it as a joke a number of years before and it's like their only asset that couldn't be liquidated. They live in this rundown motel and they gradually learn to become actual human beings with empathy. That's the plot of the show. So one of the main characters is this like fashion forward, super femme, pansexual, honestly kind of bitchy adult son, David Rose, who's played by Dan Levy, who's Eugene Levy's son. And he plays his dad in the show, and they like wrote the show together. So in season 2, his character, David, and we get to meet Patrick, who is a conscientious, cute as a button, average guy who wears terrible jeans and discovers his queerness by inexplicably falling in love with David. And this book, this fic, A Fair Return, is Patrick's story. It is about it's about gender, and it's about queer community, and it is about discovering things about yourself later in life than you think you are supposed to discover them. And so earlier I talked about the Zen Cho book being queer normative, the setting being queer normative, and Schitt's Creek in general, but this fic in particular, do that same thing in the best way. And Dan Levy's talked about, they made this creative choice in the show to avoid all homophobia. There was going to be not a single homophobia storyline that happened in this show. At no point do they encounter homophobia in the show. It's great. I love it. A Fair Return takes this farther. Basically, everyone in this fic, original characters and characters from the show, is queer or trans. I mean, obviously Ray is gay. How did the show not go there? I don't even know. Ronnie is like this queer granny weatherwax who's like grumpily growing this tight, loving LGBTQIA plus community with these networks of favors and help. Oh my God, I hope you're all downloading this right now. If you have not read everything by Things with Wings, now you get to. You're so lucky. She tells us in the notes that she says, quote, as a queer person who grew up in rural Canada and had my queer revelations a little later in life than some, I found myself having a lot of feelings about Patrick, and this fic is my attempt to write those feelings down. Oh my God. Now I'm so excited you get to read all of these. You should definitely tell me about it when you do. Like, just send me a DM and be like, yes, I just read it. It's so good. So, tropes. Oh, tropes. Oh, wait, before we go on to tropes. The AI Who Loved Me was another one of Holly's slides. And none of us have read it, and all of us own it. And we've had it on a to-read pile forever. We want to read this book so bad and haven't done it. So heads up that you too should add this to your pile. It's about an AI. It's an AI romance.
Everything Alyssa Cole is wonderful. Like,
brilliant.
Cosign.
Just do it. Just, you don't even have to hear what it's about. Just go buy it now. And I think it was originally produced as an audiobook, right? It was one of the Audible originals.
It was an Audible exclusive, yeah.
Yeah. So now it's also a print book. Okay. Oh my goodness, my friends. This is so exciting. So let me just take a moment, because my God, I love tropes. I could not decide which one to pick. They are memes. They're story memes. You get to dive in and subvert them or whatever you want, and everybody gets to join in because you're playing with what they know or what's been done before. It's like narrative umami. It's the best. It turns out, as I said earlier, that even though it was my idea to talk about tropes, I do not like choosing a favorite trope. Like, how could I possibly decide between soulmates or road trips or there was only one bed? I decided to go with good old second chance, because that lets you, that often encompasses all others. So second chance romances are when somebody gets a second chance to do a romance over. Like, usually they messed it up the first time or life got in the way. And I love them for so many reasons. There are redemption arcs. Usually the heroes and heroines are like more seasoned or older, like they've been hurt before, you know? They usually have the chance to forgive and grow. And you usually have to work pretty hard for a happily ever after with a second chance romance, because there's always a reason it didn't work the first time. And there's baggage there. So it was very hard to choose just 3 books to start this slide off. So I kind of cheated and I chose 2 plus a trilogy. Sorry, / you're welcome. Shall I go through these and then everybody throws in your own second chance romances? Like other ones we should add? Okay. So really quick, because I already did 5 book talks, but it turned out that when I was like, oh, I can only do 5, that it was like, actually I could do 5 million. So Fumbled by Alexa Martin. Secret baby, but not in a gross way, which is usually my problem with secret babies. He's an NFL star. She's a single mom and a waitress at a strip club who was his bestie and his first love in high school. And you know, when you're reading a book and you're like, wow, this romance author is an expert in like maritime history or eels or whatever. And then it turns out that like she has a master's degree in maritime history or eels or whatever. And then there's that like super tangible pleasure of hearing somebody write about an area in which they have this obvious like rare expertise and insight. So this is totally like that. Alexa Martin is the wife of an NFL player, and her knowledge of being a football spouse like shone through these pages. It was fascinating. I do not watch football, and I was gripped by every piece of this book. Highly, highly recommended. So that was Fumbled by Alexa Martin. And then, more sports. I couldn't believe this, but I couldn't help it. I am not totally 100% sure this counts as a second chance romance, but it was honestly one of my favorite books that I've read this year, and I figure it counts enough to put it on your radar. So Ryan Price is an enormous, scary, muscly dude who has been unwillingly pigeonholed as a hockey enforcer. So I don't watch hockey. I have just read hockey romances, and from that I have learned that enforcers are there to like scare people and like sometimes beat them up, basically. He's been doing this since he was a teen. He didn't particularly want to do it. He didn't really have any choice in the matter. He's gay, he's quietly out. He has a major anxiety disorder that he manages with medication and awareness and therapy. And he has also just gotten traded to a new NFL team, and he's kind of facing down more of the same misery of this job that he doesn't really love anymore. And nothing is looking that exciting. One day he's in a drugstore and he runs into the very femmy, very out crush of his teen years, a guy who has always hated all things hockey and hockey players other than Ryan. And they get back together because they are no longer teenagers. The book is about their romance, which is lovely and satisfying. And because it's a second chance romance, it is also about them getting through their shit. This is the best kind of second chance. It's people in rough situations genuinely trying their best to take care of each other and be their best selves, but like messing up sometimes because of their own baggage. And I love the raw honesty and the way the story gets them to both to an HEA. So good. And finally, okay, this one is cheating a little bit because I am not going to tell you who the second chance romance is between because of spoilers, but I promise it's got secret identities and multiple road trips in case that's your trope, and sometimes there's only one bed. So, book one. This series is the Davabad trilogy by S.A. Chakraborty. And, and the last one was Tough Guy by Rachel Reed. I just like leaped in without even saying the name of the book. Sorry. So the Davabad trilogy has just finished. The last book just came out this year, which means you do not have to wait. It begins. The heroine is a con artist in 18th century Cairo. I know. One day, she is running a con where she pretends to communicate with the spirit world, accidentally summoning an actual Jinn warrior. She gets caught up in a lost legacy and a world of real magic and what is quite honestly a real romp of a story. If you like detailed, super fun world building and grouchy banter and the kind of story that starts with like, guess what? You're a secret magic princess who has to claim your legacy and then develops into like political, emotionally complex plotting, this is for you. I also love that all the characters, with the exception of the Jinn, are Muslim, as is the author, which shapes the flow of the story in all sorts of really small, like interesting, cool ways. So my Goodreads review for the first book just said, holy crap, how am I supposed to wait for book 2? And guess what? You don't have to wait anymore. Even the third book is out now. So that means you get the full impact of the second chance romance and the HEA, and it's so worth it because the series only gets better as you go. Anybody else have a favorite second chance romance? Oops. To throw in there? Throw in the ring?
Yeah, I do. My gold standard for second chance romance is a book by Farah Roshan, and I'm trying to remember the title. I'm terrible at it, but it's about a married couple, and there's been no big crisis. It's part of an ongoing series.
Cherish Me.
Yeah.
Cherish Me. Thank you. That's the one. It's part of an ongoing series, so you've met so many family members and you've seen them going through some of their drama, and this couple has existed in the background, and in the course of all of that drama they've just sort of drifted apart, and they decide they're going to take like an anniversary trip to Rome and try to reconnect. He's been living somewhere else, like he's been living in his office. They've just kind of lost touch with one another, and they want to get it back together, and they want to figure out what has happened. And it's all very, you know how we talk about Jane Austen doing very domestic drama that still feels like world changing, that the scale of it isn't big in terms of like, we're not saving an empire. The scale of it is very specific. But because it's so central to those characters' lives, it feels like it looms over everything. And so watching them slowly work through their issues, will this anniversary trip help? Will it not? Like, can you paper over something with just a vacation? Like, how much time does it take to repair something so subtle? It's glorious. It's absolutely real, and it's wonderfully warm, and it was so, so beautifully done.
Oh, that was so good.
I will just second Fumbled. The Alexa Martin book is spectacular. I think that what you're getting at too, that joy of reading somebody who knows an interior world so very well. It's like, it almost doesn't matter what it is, but just like the love and attention to the detail and the way she wraps all of it into the story makes it kind of integral to the plot. It's just, I mean, you just go along with it and get swept up in this world and care. And it's even more meaningful when it's something you don't really care about in real life. I could really care less, honestly. I couldn't care less. But I really felt these characters. I think she also pulls off the Secret Baby in a way that I have been kind of done with Secret Baby for a long time. And I was like, I don't know about this one. I read all the other books, but like, oh. And it really, she pulls it off really, really well. So I would second that highly.
Totally. Oh, should I move on? Robin, do you have a second chance to throw in there? I know you talked about one in your thing. I don't want to move on too fast to the next trope if we've still got more for this one.
No, I'm good. I would second Cherished. I really, really love that book. But yeah, I talked about one earlier, so we're good.
Found Family.
So this is my jam. Like, spoiler alert, this is why Deal with the Devil was at the top of my list, because I feel like I don't see this as often in romance as I do in science fiction or fantasy. And I think the reason for that is because in romance, we're really focused on the one couple and the one couple getting together. And that just makes it hard to build in relatable side characters. So what I did love about Deal with the Devil is that it does a great job of balancing this main couple and then also both of their respective teams, and really fleshes out the individual members of their team in such a way that you feel like you have a picture of how these people would fight together and interact together and the ways they fill each other's gaps as a team, not necessarily a romantic unit. So like, I'm a huge fan of the Old Guard for that reason. I think like there are the Avengers, like this is all of this kind of trope. I love it when you throw in a heist or an impossible job, which is why Six of Crows is up there. I think Crooked Kingdom series is probably one of the best, most well-written in this particular trope and subgenre. I think it's like engaging and wonderful, and it appeals to like a wide age. I would give it to teens. I read it as an adult and loved it, and I've read it twice. Great cast of characters. I first encountered this trope, and sort of like my first love was The Last Unicorn. It is a magician, a unicorn, a scullery maid, and a talking cat, essentially, that wind up together on this mission to find out what happened to all of the unicorns. And I think that's where that kind of cemented in my brain as like, what a cool trope, a bunch of people who basically have nothing to do with each other, people and animals that are kind of like work together toward a common goal and find that they have more in common and that they are a family. So periodically, Peter Beagle has revisited the Last Unicorn characters in a couple of short stories. And that's always a pleasure to sort of see where, and there's a little romance in that book that kind of sneaks up on you because it's not who you're expecting. So I always love that too. So I think, like I said, it is a little harder to find in romance, and specifically romance, because of the couple focus. But I think romance does this well when you look at a series overall. So 2 series that I felt like really managed to capture this sort of found family over the course of the series. Marjorie Lou's Dirk and Steel, which is done as far as I know, and I think it's 7 or 9 books, so you have a good span of books to read. those are all, Dirk and Steel is like a detective agency, only they're supernatural, and Tiger Eye is the first book in the series, and it's completely bonkers. I think it's like a mid-aughts urban fantasy romance, so it's got all of the bonker plot of like alpha males and tiger shifters, and she's a little damselly in distress, but it works because that's the day. And then Elizabeth Hunter is an indie who does in these incredible vampire books, basically, and Elemental Mysteries is the series that I think of because it starts out with this kind of small group of found family vampires. Vampires is where you see found family a lot, especially because they're not related by blood, maybe in the traditional way, but wind up together doing something. So Elemental Mysteries are great for that, and that I think is about 3 books deep, or 4 or 5 books deep, and maybe a spin-off series as well. So you've got plenty of reading material to go. So they're all over the world. They're very international. They're super inclusive, really fun cast. And if you like history and archaeology and mysteries and supernatural creatures, and she's got this badass warrior woman, Tenzin, who is really fun to watch as a vampire and kind of evolves from this like feral creature to like this really interesting character through the course of these books, and I just really love them. So that's where I'd say to go for your found family band of misfits books. What do you have for me?
I would say in terms of romance, found family, Adriana Herrera's Dreamers series. So because none of them are related, but they're very much brothers, and it kind of centers on found family and each one of them finding their happily ever after. But I would even argue maybe the most important relationship there is between the 4 main characters, each of whom has their own book.
I feel like there's a lot of found family and like shifters as well as vampires. Like I just read like I can't say that they're like the most brilliant ever, but they've been really fun. Gail Carriger has a series called the San Andreas Shifters that is werewolves and other various complicated shifters living in the Bay Area, and they're mostly all queer, and that's very much a like, you know, our family of origin was, for a lot of them, the family of origin was abusive or was just not a good match for them, and they've all kind of created this whole new family there, and it's really fun. I really like it. Dorky Shifters. It's the San Andreas Shifters is the name of the series.
I'd also add Shelley Lawrenston, because even in her series where like it's based around like one particular family, they tend to acquire other individuals and like build the family up. So it feels very like, it gives me that kind of Band of Misfits vibe. And is it G.A. Aiken that she writes the fantasy romance under?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like The Iron Crown, which was, how many people did we kill in that first chapter? Like so many, and they were having such a good time doing it. Like, because you know the king died, and it's all of like the 50 children trying to assassinate one another to claim the throne, and like it was so much fun. It was so much fun. Like just acres of poisonings and beheadings all around, and you're like,
mayhem.
It's that kind of book.
You said geeky, and that reminded me of the Blues Dirty Sexy Geeks series, which is also found family.
Yeah,
totally. And I don't know if it really counts as romance, but and you've probably read them already, but all of Becky Chambers' books, Long Way to a Small Angry Planet is one of my favorite found family, although that's more just science fiction and less romance. But it has some romance in it.
It has a romance arc. Like
there's an arc.
It counts.
Good. Man.
It's romance safe, so
I'm so excited. I actually picked up my phone while you were talking so that I could put 2 of those on hold right away.
Yeah.
Like, yes, thank you, Libby. I've got it. What is our next trope? Let's see. Enemies to lovers.
Oh, yeah. I love enemies to lovers because it seems like it's built-in angst, because I really cannot stand you. And I also like that there's a range. So on the one end, you have like the red, white, and royal blue, which they don't like each other, but it's not angsty, angry enemies to lovers. It's just, yeah, you're not my favorite person. And if I never saw you again, I would be fine with that, except for you're kind of hot. And let's pretend now that we're doing something and, oh, look, we're together. So very much a romantic comedy, very fun, but kind of on the lighter end. And then on the other end, you have Laura Lee Gerke's The Marriage Bed, one of my all-time favorite books, where it is that very angsty enemies to lovers, except they're married and they can't really get out of it because, you know, it's whatever historical England and you're stuck with this jerk. And that goes both ways. They're both jerks to each other. And, oh, wait, no, I think we're actually in love now. Damn. So, yeah, love that book. And then kind of in the middle is Hate to Want You, where their families really don't like each other and for very good reason. But they are actors who come together once a year on her birthday to have a night of awesome, because they just can't stay away from each other. So that, like, it's just so much of, I don't want to be here, but I absolutely don't want to be anywhere else. That I love.
I was describing the plot of Red, White, and Royal Blue to a coworker when it came out, and so I'm like, okay, and then he's the prince, but then the other one's like the son of the president, but like it's like fantasy, but it's like pretending to be realistic. I'm going through this whole thing, and she's like, so basically, it's a Disney Channel original movie, but like with banging, and I was like, that's it. Yup, that's money.
Exactly.
Channel original movie. He's totally the vibe of that book, and I was like, "Yep, that's it. Love it."
You nailed it. That's exactly it.
Also, if I could only pick one book to go into the world of, I think it would be Red, White, and Royal Blue, because I would want to go to every single party in that book.
Oh my God.
They all sounded amazing.
Yes. And also, I want to live in that world where she's the president.
Yeah, that would be great. That sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
That was probably one of the happiest things about that book is look at this world where this can actually happen.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
I think her next one is a little bit supernatural and FF. It's like a girl meets a ghost girl on the subway.
Oh my God, can't wait.
Like,
I like it.
yeah, it's something like they're always sharing the same subway car, but there's a supernatural element. Like it's either somebody's in a past time or it's somebody's a ghost. But yeah, either way, like, yeah, so in.
I love it. I love the range of enemies to lovers for the exact thing that you mentioned, because I really don't like hate sex is not my jam. It's just like not my thing. And I feel like a lot of times when people are recommending enemies to lovers books, there's a lot of like, now we're having hate sex. But I love that it can actually encompass like such a huge range of like fluff or, man, I can't stand you, but also I'm sort of obsessed with you. Like that Lydia San Andreas book.
Yes. Summer for Scandal?
Scandal? Oh my God, where she is a secret, she is a secret writer of like sexy genre romance columns in 1800s small Caribbean island, and he is the critic that like lambastes every single one of her stories, but like also reads them very, very closely. Like he's her biggest.
I have not read it. I need to.
Oh, it's so good. It's like a tropical vacation. Everything is people in white linen pushing each other into lagoons and then going off to eat guava jam, like, and talking about book, and there's like Latina suffragettes everywhere. It's amazing.
So great. Everything that she writes is good. Oh my God. Lydia San Andreas, everybody. I almost put that one in this year because I was like, we have to include it. And then I was like, oh, we did it last year. This is the problem I have. Oh man.
If we're talking fluffy enemies to lovers, the one I always recommend is Daughter of the Sun by Effie Calvin.
Oh yeah.
And it's
Good for
a paladin who hunts down trickster gods and like troublesome gods and goddesses to banish them back to the astral plane. And she's hunting a trickster goddess, and the trickster goddess hides in the the paladin manages to behead one vessel, and the trickster goddess hides in the body of a mortal. Like there's some kind of like, she's not possessing anybody. There's some kind of like other thing where she gets trapped in a mortal body, and the paladin doesn't realize she's the trickster goddess. So the paladin's like, well, let me help you get home. So they go on a road trip together. And meanwhile, the trickster goddess is learning how to be human, and the paladin's going, something weird is going on. We may need to fight some evil. And they fall in love. And it is amazing. It is absolutely, it is so good. It's the second in a trilogy. You can read it on its own. The first one's fun. The first one's a little rough at the beginning. The second one is definitely like one of my favorite romances. It's so fun. And it's everything about like, I have a secret, but I can't tell you, but it doesn't really like go like the Pharaoh Roshan, the Boyfriend Project, which was amazing, but that lie went on so long. And if that's your catnip, that's your book. And I was like, I don't know, like we don't have enough time to forgive these people at the end.
Yeah, that's true. Well, so I realize that I have no idea how long we've been talking, but it has been kind of a long time, and I feel like we could do it for like 3 more hours, but we probably should stop because presumably even online people need to like go to other events. So heads up that you can go to the website on your screen in order to see every single book that we have recommended, plus whatever else we think of between now and the time this airs, because we can just keep adding to it because the magic of time and the internet. So we're going to put them all on there. And thank you. Thanks for watching. Happy reading.
Thank you.
We are so glad that even though we could not all be at Geek Girl Con together this year, we all get to be online. And thanks to all of you for doing this. I'm so glad we could talk about books.
Thanks
Thank
again.
you.
Always happy to.
Mm-hmm.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.